Welcome, everyone. Further ado, the resolution on the table tonight is resolved. The Republican Party is the party of the working class. I now call this debate to order, and I am looking for a first speech in the affirmative. For our first speech, do we have Peter? Are you ready? Please unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm unmuted. Is Peter Hall you talking about?
Yep.
Hello.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Wait,
But-
we got a couple of different Peters.
Uh,
I'm Peter Hall. Which one?
Sorry, I cannot see either of you. Why, let me see. Peter,
Our
I'm,
first
I'm
speaker,
sorry, it's just Emily. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the screen to stop sharing. It'll be down in a moment.
gotcha. All right. Peter, why?
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Braver Angels for hosting this national virtual discussion, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to my stance on this issue. I first heard about Braver Angels on Google. I was Googling how to depolarize our country's political divide, how to depolarize our country, and how to help heal America in the wake of a divisive presidential election. Anyway, first, the American people have the right to be angry, and they have the right to channel it into action. Many upper-class people don't have the same lives as working-class people. They're struggling. And over the past 8 years, there's been increasing tolerance for pro-working-class policies among certain GOP politicians. Second, J.D. Vance being named Donald Trump's running mate strengthened the trend of the Republican Party being the working-class party, just like how there was a trend towards Democrats voting for Ronald Reagan Democrats. And third, President Joe Biden's election was a promise of change and unity to a divided country, but unfortunately, Biden's going to be walking out of the White House with a low approval rating because of weakness and policies that just aren't really supported by a lot of people. And fourth, Democrats failed to effectively communicate to working class people. Therefore, I believe the Republican Party is the party of the working class.
Thank you, Peter. And now I am looking for questions for our speaker. Please raise your Zoom hand. I have questions of curiosity. You have up to 30 seconds. We will go to Charles.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering what the third point was that the speaker made about Biden leaving office. I didn't make the connection there.
Would the speaker care to reiterate his third point?
What I was saying was that Joe Biden's approval rating is at an all-time low, and it's in like the high 30s and close to the low 40s, just like Jimmy Carter's. I like to argue that Joe Biden's first and only term in the White House is pretty much like Jimmy Carter's second term, because Carter had the perception of weakness, just like Biden, and Biden has a foreign policy debacle and high inflation under his belt. And I believe Biden, in my opinion, misinterpreted his mandate because, he fell into the overreach trap because people wanted a certain set of policies, and they wanted someone who was middle of the road instead of an FDR LBJ like figure. And Biden and his team also failed to effectively communicate to working class people. Their communication strategies really need an improvement.
Thank you very much. Let's go to another question from Ed.
Hello.
Ed, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Unmuted there. Thank you. My apologies. I would like a question of clarification of the speaker. Now, granted, I thought the Biden communication strategy was terrible, but how do you think Biden exhibited weakness as a president?
How does the speaker think?
Yes.
Well, basically, I'm talking about things that are not related to working class life, but by weakness, I mean, the perception of weakness is something you don't want to have if you're a commander in chief. And by that, I mean, what I can say is that the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan, the way it was executed, that left the perception among the majority of the people that Joe Biden is a weak leader, and in addition, the inflation thing, it's the economy, stupid, are the four most important words of every presidential election, because many people go to vote based on the economy. And if the economy is bad, then that reinforces the perception that Joe Biden isn't right for them. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you very much. And now I will go to one more question for this speaker. Let's go to Melinda.
Hello.
Hello, I was wondering if you could better define. Hello?
Oh, if the speaker could address your question to me.
Yes, Madam Chair. If I could get clarification, when we talk about being the party of the working class, one question I had was, is it defined by who best communicates to the working class, who has political sway, or has direct governmental policies and programs for the working class, and do you include working class government employees?
To our
Yes, by working class, I mean people who live, below the poverty line, people who just can't afford a mansion, can't afford multiple homes, can't afford Lamborghinis, and can't afford basically the same lifestyles that millionaires and billionaires have.
And with that, our speaker and questioners are thanked. I am now going to our first speech in the negative. And for that, do we have Patsy?
Yes, we do. So I'm answering in the negative. I think the issue is complicated. It is true that more college-educated voters have been leaving the Republican Party to join the Democrats, and those without college degrees, who are often referred to as working class, have been leaving the Democratic Party and joining the Republican Party, especially when Trump became the candidate. While many voters in this election were angry about the economy and voted for Trump, the Trump administration is going to have to produce for them, boosting wages, increasing jobs, lowering prices for food and gas. If his policies don't do that, people will be up in arms and more likely to vote Democratic next time. Also, some voters who voted for Trump in this election voted Democrat down ballot. There were 5 battleground states where there were highly competitive Senate races, and the Democrats won 4 out of 5, even though Trump won these states. So more voters split the ballot in this election than we saw in 2016 and 2020. So working class allegiance to party can be a volatile thing. People want to see the quality of their lives improve, and if they don't experience that, they'll vote for the other party. Also, the situation coming out of COVID really scrambled our economy, especially the first 2 years of the Biden presidency. There was terrible inflation, problems with supply, unprecedented border crossings, issues the Biden administration played down, and that left many people feeling stranded without leadership that addressed their real needs. In the 2024 Republican primary, 17 million voted for Trump, but in the general election, 74 million voted for him. That's a huge difference. And even though fewer voters vote in the primary, it still suggests that many moderate working class Americans voted for Trump, not as MAGA loyalists. It is these citizens that will need to see change that makes them feel more economically secure in order to keep voting Republican. Americans are engaged voters, and they don't put up with bad government for long, and that is more important than loyalty to party.
With that, our speaker is thanked, and we now will go to questions. We are looking for questions of curiosity or clarification, and I remember to address them to me. So we will go to our previous speaker.
Hello. So first up, I have to agree with you, Patsy, that I am pretty sure that it is likely that I believe there's going to be a backlash if Donald Trump overreaches, because he is walking into a classic trap that kills presidencies, as Matt Robinson wrote in an op-ed for Newsweek. I mean, he could probably go the way of George W. Bush, whose approval rating declined after his Social Security plan sparked outrage and after his response to Hurricane Katrina and the Great Recession was wiped for what we can do.
Is that and what does the speaker think about that?
Well, I think that that's true, that there is, and I think that the Republicans are already well aware of this, that there is going to be an election in 2026 that they are going to be preparing for. And so they're going to really have to demonstrate loyalty to the working class voters who, frankly, have been kind of left behind. Stagnant wages since the 70s, all kinds of problems that have not been addressed. So I think they're anxious to see change, and they'll need to see it.
All right, let's go to some new voices. I will take a question from Sonia, please.
Hi, it's my first time. I've just joined. I'm very curious to hear what the speaker thinks about who identifies as working class. It's got a specific historical base within a class, within the Marxist system and within socialism. Is it even a useful definition anymore? Do people, especially in terms of talking about voter behavior, do we still have a minute? It's just understanding it comes from a certain construct and worldview of a certain time. Is it helpful for us to look at it through this prism? That's my question.
Yeah. Really, really good point, Sonia. It is really complicated because some people think of it as people who do not have college degrees, and just say it's that simple. But others say no, it is income level, and income level is what's really critical. And probably it's a mix of many things, but it's people who have less control in their lives, in terms of their work lives and in terms of being able to provide for their families than many in our society. And so it's a broad swath of people. There's a great book called Second Class that just was written that was talked about just the diversity in working class. So it's a really good question, and it's a complicated answer. That's the best I can do.
And for one more question, I'm going to go to Lisa.
Hi, is the speaker saying therefore that the working class, whatever we establish that to mean, will go for whoever sounds like they have a better deal for them? They're not really loyal to anyone? I kind of inferred that.
I certainly think that there are people who are Trump loyalists. Trump galvanized people as never before, and a lot of working class people, for sure. So I can't deny that. But I do think that there's also, as I said, when I talk about the 17 million versus the 74 million who actually voted for him in the general, that's a huge difference. That I think there's a lot of people in that who aren't necessarily thrilled with Trump per se and the Republican Party per se, but we're fed up with the Democratic Party and its policies. And we have a two-party winner-take-all system, whether we like it or not. So when you don't like one party, what you do is you vote for the other party. So that's what I meant by that.
With that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. Moving on, we will look for our second speech in the affirmative. And for that, I want to go to Edward Strickler. Please unmute. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I speak in the affirmative that the Republican Party is the party of the working class for now and sometimes. For now, because political ideologies are in flux, and sometimes because working class communities are not all the same, and not every platform or policy of the Republican Party is supported by working class communities. But working class communities do have some things in common: lower educational achievement across the community, lower household income across the community, and importantly, fewer household and community assets to recover from crises. These measures eloquently describe rural America. That's where I'm speaking from. Rural America is predominantly working class communities, and the political party predominantly preferred by rural Americans for now is the Republican Party. This can change. Once upon a time, the Democratic Party was favored by rural electorates. Electorates change allegiances sometimes after actual or perceived betrayals. For now, rural electorates favor the Republican Party after the Democratic Party's betrayal of rural communities and communities of other working classes for the past 40 years or so. Demographics is not, however, a sealed destiny because values also matter. For now, the Republican Party exudes values that sound true to rural working classes. Rural-urban values divides were great on many key issues that the Democratic Party has argued particularly poorly for a long time. So on some values important to rural and other working classes, the Democratic Party appears distinctly untrustworthy. While the Republican Party makes a better fit with rural values for now, Republicans' overreach may corrode actual or perceived moral coherence with working class values. All political parties carry a, pardon, shitload of moral incoherence, don't they? And it eventually comes out. For example, a retired Republican Virginia legislator in my ruby red, or sometimes I call it bloody red, congressional district, told me that rural people ought to expect worse access and worse quality of maternity and infant health care because they chose to live in a rural area. But that is prima facie and observably morally incoherent for a party that claims to love unborn infants who did not choose to live anywhere. So to conclude, for now, sometimes the Republican Party is less distasteful to rural working classes than Democrats, and therefore is, for now, and sometimes, the party of the working class. Thank you.
Madam Speaker is thanked, and I see that this speaker has got a lot of people raising hands. I will ask, this doesn't happen when I've been chairing before. Let's wait until the speaker's done to raise our hands. But that was not a rule until now, so no penalties for that. We will start with Mark. Mark, please unmute and ask your question to me.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would wonder about what the speaker would say if I asked to explain the reference to the Democratic Party's betrayal of the working class. I don't understand what the betrayal is that was referred to there, and I'd like him to explain it.
Right. To the speaker.
Thank you. For example, where I live, people used to make really good livings across generations manufacturing furniture or textiles. Those jobs got all shipped abroad in or about the Clinton administration or so. This is repeated across most of rural America in different ways. I could drive you through my area and point out places where people used to have really good jobs. They are gone. That is betrayal. Thank you.
Let's go to Quao. Please unmute and ask your question to me.
Thank you so much. Name is Quiet. Somehow got misspelled. Q-U-A-I. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask the speaker. He spoke about rural values and those being more matched by Republicans. And I'd like to know more specifically what type of values are being referenced. And sort of along with that question comes the fact that working class people, and I'm wondering what the conception of those people socially might look like. Does that also include Black people, other people of color?
Thank you very much. I can't speak for all working class communities. I can speak for mine to the point of my experience of knowing people. And I'll go directly to your question of race. My community has historically, I'm speaking to Madam Chair, my community has historically large Black populations, including communities and even counties that are majority Black. So our working class values are what I would include as we work hard and help one another. And we don't, in general, want government to get in the way with overregulation and other requirements that get in the way of us working hard, supporting families, and helping our communities together. So, and I don't want to take too much time. I could go on, but that's one example. Thank you.
And for one more question, I see MD. You had your hand up last time, so MD, go for it.
Yeah, my name is Maria. I have the same question as the first person about the democratic betrayal. Madam Chair, I would ask the speaker to clarify how the loss of jobs is a betrayal of the Democratic Party because it coincided with the Clinton administration, but how does he perceive the causality? It could be unrelated correlation.
To our speaker.
So thank you. I'm not an ethicist. I'm not an economist. I'm an ethicist, but I've lived in rural communities for a long time. I'll be 70 in a little bit. It's not merely a correlation in people's experience. Their experience is that Democratic parties at the national level and in the state level abandoned them and then neglected them and then started calling them stupid names like deplorable and we can call out some of the other names that we were called. Rural folks don't like that. They believe that they're not heard, they don't have a voice. I can tell you many times where I've asked state or federal or national organizations how many rural representatives they have on their advisory board or their research committee or on their executive board. They look at me as if I'm asking them, do you have any Martians on your board? Thank you.
With that, the speaker and questioners are thanked. We now move to our second speech in the negative. For that, I am looking for Jason. Jason, you have 4 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Yeah, for me, I feel like a lot gets lost between the lines just because I think there's been a lot of patterns that we've all missed, but that's a bigger discussion for another day that I think is responsible for why we have such a diverse of opinions, specifically as far as are Republicans better for the people? Well, I was just thinking recently of how Elon and Trump were laughing over him firing thousands of workers that were trying to unionize. It was a big laugh for them. And then recently, Elon pushed for the surplus of H-1B visas way more than Democrats have. And then Trump sheepishly, agreed to that 3 hours later, making us wonder who's really in charge. Not to mention Trump's countless lawsuits against him from blue-collar workers and construction workers before he took presidency. While he was president, his record deficit above all other presidents. His 2000 tax cut killed deductibles for employees and greatly favored the rich by about 200%. Personally, I almost never paid taxes until his tax cut, while the average American that didn't do deductibles saw an increase. Overall, for me, Democrats versus Republicans since 1980, Democrats have had a 50 to 1 job growth about roughly. I added up all of the deficits of both sides personally, adjusted them for inflation, and Democrats had a roughly 4 trillion less in deficits solved for AGI. No recessions on the Democrat side, arguably versus Bush's main recession. And then we had a near recession caused by Trump's COVID negligence, claiming it was not a thing, it's going to go away, while admitting in private that it's very serious. Republicans keep attacking the ACA and have nothing more than a concept of a replacement for it, which will greatly harm the average employee out there.
Speaker.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Let's go to Ruth for a question. And yeah. Yep. Ruth, you are muted. There we go.
I said I'm happy to be with a group of thinkers and a good chair, so appreciate it. I've been thinking a lot about who is really in the middle class and working class. And look at this. Young nurses, young interns, new police and firefighters, new teachers, all artists, new entrepreneurs trying to figure out what to invest in. They're living from dollar to dollar, pay to pay. And do they think differently than people who you ordinarily cast in the working class group? I don't know. Has it been discovered or discussed? Anybody?
And what does the speaker think about that?
I think that's a very beautiful and emotional question in a good way, because it touches a nerve in a good way. Because I hate it when Republicans are like, oh yeah, we need to protect the middle class like Elon Musk. And it's like, give me a break. He's the richest guy in the world. And there's a sort of this meme, I feel, on the right, where the groups are small business. And like there was one of the Senate hearings. It's like, at what point should we tax businesses? And it went above billions of dollars. My sister was an LAUSD teacher. So yeah, I definitely agree that the middle class are the workers, are the grunts of America that have all of the middle class jobs, from teachers, firefighters, who are part of the grind of, we need to do X in order to, establish our thing. Just as a simple, very overly simple answer. And then all the ones that are more executive, that are more administrative, that are more oversight, I would not put those in the middle class. I do agree they deserve, compensation, but at some point we have to be willing to have that discussion of at what point is there too much success, and at what point and how can we better support middle-class Americans? Obviously, and everything is a tough discussion, but I think something like food stamps, as long as you're working on something, trying to improve, that's always a good thing. ACA, it's always a good thing, but we need to reverse Reagan's destruction of the healthcare system in the 1980s when he removed it from the Medicare-like pricing system. But yeah, just to summarize your point, it's the people who are grinding from paycheck to paycheck that America is resting on, and they don't have time to research all the politics. They don't have time to look into all the weeds. And I would agree that Democrats have largely, insanely failed to do proper opposition research when it is crazy. So yeah, thank you.
For our next question, let's go to Vitali.
Hi, Madam Chair. My question, it's more of a statement, I guess. I just want to say that whenever we talk about specific Democratic or Republican administrations having recessions or not, it's usually policies take a very long time to take effect, and sometimes the president that comes after reaps the benefits of the administration beforehand, and I don't think it's a valuable data point in most discussions. I just want to know what you think about that, or what the speaker wants. Thank you.
Good catch.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would say yes, economics and policies, especially the limitation that a president will have. We shouldn't be so quick to give boons to one and claim recessions on another. But I think we can all agree, I would hope, at least on Bush's side, that his, Iraq war, Afghanistan, deregulating the banks, and all of the vicious lending, malicious lending that they were doing, I think we can all agree that those were bad policies that led to a Republican recession. Now, I think there might be more of a disagreement of like, okay, well, Trump is different, MAGA is different. That's, I think, a more reasonable discussion. And then if we then look at COVID and be like, okay, well, is it fair to blame that near recession on Trump? Trump didn't cause COVID, and et cetera. But I would personally disagree, just because once we had the first confirmed cases that he recognized on Twitter, he kept telling the American public, this is no big deal. And he did nothing. He did nothing. And he, I recognize it's kind of unfair for me to say he let it grow, except for his private phone calls where he'd say, oh yeah, this thing's crazy. But then in public, he's like, oh, it's going away. So then I think it's fair to say he let it grow. And personally, I don't think he wanted to win the next term, because by the time the election was coming around, COVID was hitting like crazy. Tons of Democrats couldn't vote. They could only mail-in vote, and that was part of an amazing smoke and mirror scheme to them being like, oh look, they're hacking the mail-in votes. It's kind of complicated, or out of the weeds, so to speak. But then I would pin that recession on him for that very reason. And I think it's unfortunate that Biden gets a lot of heat for not recovering from those effects well enough. Like there's the supply line increases from all the COVID whatnot. And then there's other, and this is a much different topic that we can probably cover another day of foreign affairs and stuff. But I don't think it's any, I don't think it's a coincidence that Putin engaged a war with Ukraine to increase oil prices worldwide as well. So we had the worldwide COVID to recover from, plus Putin's odd war with Ukraine to fight Nazis, and because of NATO expansionism, even though there was nothing on the record of Ukraine trying to fast track or trying to join in any way. And if anyone can find a link, I'd be more than happy to see it. I haven't found one.
Let's bring this to a close.
Yeah, sure.
And thank you. I will take one more question. Let's keep it brief. I will go to Phil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the speaker tended to focus a lot of his discussion around economics and how that plays into the decisions of voters. The previous speaker also talked about sort of the culture gap he saw between Democrats and working class communities. I wonder what the current speaker thinks about that.
So the difference between working class and higher level income earners?
The cultural differences in terms of how working class people, what kinds of cultural values they hold, and how those may differ from the Democratic Party cultural values, and how working class people may perceive Democrats as looking down on them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, I don't really get too much into the culture wars. I think the far left did way too hardcore, and I think that created lasting damage that helped elect Trump. I think, for me, it's really just, if you're working hard, you're working hard. If you're a worker, you're a worker. But I do agree that that there have been some programs with not DEI as a whole, but there have been some instances where the left, but especially the far left, did go too far in calling people racist or whatever, and creating those sort of cultural divides that has made part of the working class. I feel that the working class, one of the more cultural based fears would probably be just along the lines of, are we safe working? Or like when Me Too went too far to, instead of trust but verify, which historically it went to believe in jail and believe in report for a little bit, which for the working class, for a lot of Americans, did kind of create that sort of fear of like, well, this is kind of crazy in another direction. But yeah, for me, I don't think there's really, I don't see much of a culture war. I know it's a big thing online in politics. But I think what it really just comes down to is sort of like the facts that we're discussing in this debate. And I hope that answered your question.
With that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. And now I am looking for another speech in the affirmative. For that, I would like to go to Wilk Wilkinson. Wilk, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everybody who's come up with some great and sometimes interesting points tonight, and the questions have been fantastic as well. I first want to go to the idea that the reason I believe that the Republican Party has become the party of the working class is because for far too long, the working class, which I'll get into my definition of what the working class is, but for far too long, the working class in this country have been spoken of, spoken down to, but very seldom spoken with. The reality is none of us, I don't care if you're working class, upper class, if you're a multimillionaire, nobody as a human being likes to be ignored. not listened to, made to feel invisible. And for far too long, the political class and the political elites in this country have taken the position that rules for thee, but not for me. We can push whatever we want to push. We're going to steer this ship the way that we want to steer it. Opinions be damned of whoever. That has gotten to the reality that one of the former speakers made earlier with rural America. Rural America has been long forgotten by the political class in this country. You know, I heard him talking about, you know, driving through certain areas and seeing places where great things used to be made. I as a former truck driver, I can tell you story after story about driving through rural America and seeing towns that I know were once great towns bustling with beautiful things happening, but now you can go down Main Street and all the windows are boarded up. There's nothing going on. Nobody lives there anymore. There's a co-op outside of town that serves corporate farms, but and the people that used to own them farms now have to work at the co-op just to rent back the place that they used to own. It's a sad thing, but the political class have made that happen. That's largely happened, uh, and 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 make no mistake, I'm not going to say that any party has a monopoly on ignoring nor listening to or ignoring the working class in this country. The working class in this country is not people who just don't have a college degree. The working class are not people who live below the poverty line or just above the poverty line or whatever. I know people, you know, I know plumbers and welders who are making well over $100,000 a year. And then I know people who have college educations that are barely scraping by. It's not, there's no black and white in this. There's no clear line. We've got to get away from the idea that each person belongs in some kind of box. The reality is in this country that there are a lot of people that feel ignored. There are a lot of people in this country who feel like they're spoken about but not spoken with. And it's the Republican Party in this country that has given those people a voice in recent years specifically. Uh, the problem that I do find is that far too many people have refused to engage until they became enraged. And that's why we're in such an ugly spot. And that's why Braver Angels is what Braver Angels is, the most incredible grassroots organization working towards the depolarization in this country. We need to get back to the idea that we as citizens can speak with each other about contentious topics, but not do it in a contentious way. So the reality is we have to listen. We have to make people feel heard. We have to make people feel understood. And right now, like I said, no party has a monopoly on this. But right now, the party that does do it better than any other is the Republican Party. And there's no more evidence, no greater evidence of that than the latest election, when things like immigration and DEI policies and um, all the other things that were focused on by the Democrat Party that people in rural America just didn't think were. They either thought they were unimportant or they thought they were actually deleterious to their own personal lives. So there's where I'm at on that deal.
Thank you to our speaker. We'll now go to questions for our speaker. Let's go to Steve.
Yes, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, sorry. I would like the interpretation of the speaker as to the resolution. I think the resolution can be read different ways. I could read the resolution. The Republican Party is the party that was chosen by the working class. Okay. The other interpretation could be the Republican Party is the party that cares for the working class. Okay. And I think that we could fairly easily agree on the first interpretation that the majority of working people, the working class is divided, but let's say there is a majority that voted for the Republican Party or the Republican candidate in the.
Let's bring it to a question.
Okay, the question is, what is does the speaker believe that the Republican Party is a party who cares for the working class? And if yes, then I would like some evidence of that.
To our speaker.
So I appreciate the question, because I will take that and say that a party cannot care about anything. A party is a group of individuals that that can have all kinds of different things, and I'm not gonna ascribe motives to anything. The same way I wouldn't say that the Democrats don't care about the working class, I won't say that the Republicans care about the working class. It's one of these things that the policies that are come to as an aggregate by a particular party, and how those truly affect the people of this country. We the people, I don't care whether it's Democrats or Republicans or how a person votes. What do the policies are come to by a party as an aggregate going to do for we the people? Unfortunately, far too many of the things pushed by the Democrat Party as of late, and whether somebody wants to call them the far left or just the left or liberal Democrats, whatever you want to call them, the focus on things like open borders, DEI policies, climate change, things like that. All of those had deleterious effects on the people that work, the people that struggle the most, people in rural America, people that don't see these problems outside their front door, but they can surely see the effects of mismanaged public funds, in that they're spending far more than they ever would have or should be paying for gas, groceries, rent, property taxes, those kind of things. So the reality is no party can care or not care about anybody. It's the policies that they come up with that are the proof is in the pudding. It really is.
Thank you to our speaker. I know, and for everyone who has hands up, I remember who I didn't call on the best I can in the last round. So that's why I'm jumping around. So I'm going to go now to Atul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I would like to understand the views that can previous speaker let us know which specific legislative accomplishment or policy which Republican has passed in last 20 years, which is towards the working class people. Thank you.
Well, I think trying to close the border is a very important one. Trying to stem the flow of illegal immigration is an important part of the platform that really appeals to a lot of people, because that obviously affects the low skilled labor market, or even the semi skilled labor market. There's a lot of things going on there. The drilling, whether it be offshore drilling or the Keystone Pipeline, things like that, that keep us energy independent, fracking, coal mining, all of these different things, using our natural resources to the best of our ability in this country. There's one party that primarily stands as the party that is looking to become energy independent instead of pushing a green fallacy that we can use. I look at my own state of Minnesota, and I see fields after field after field that used to grow crops, used to grow potatoes, used to grow corn, used to grow beans, and now they're riddled with these ridiculous solar panels that are just gross, quite honestly. That and windmills and a bunch of stuff that we're never going to be able to recoup the cost on. So yeah, there's a number of different things that we could talk about there. But yeah, energy independence, legal immigration versus illegal immigration, things like that. There are plenty of examples in those buckets.
And for our final question, let's go to Alan.
Yes, hello, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd like to ask the speaker if he thinks that raising the minimum wage, expanding healthcare, and strengthening the ability of workers to unionize, if all of those things are in the interests of the working class, and if so, which party does he think best champions those three things? Again, they're raising the minimum wage, expanding healthcare, and strengthening the ability of people to unionize and collectively bargain. Thanks.
So I'll start with minimum wage, and I'll say definitively that I don't think there should be a minimum wage. Minimum wages, when you have multiple sectors of the country that you can't have a federal minimum wage when there's different things going on in different places. They just the concept doesn't work. It also stands in contrast to individual liberty for both the employer and the employee. That's what I'll say first about that. Number two, expanding healthcare. Yes, absolutely. I think we need to expand the access to healthcare to as many people as possible. The best way to do that is to get rid of the bureaucracy that the federal government has imposed on the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry and the limited access that the individual has to good healthcare in this country is primarily the responsibility of the federal government, being far too engrossed and ingrained within the healthcare establishment. And then number three, the oh hell, I forgot what was your number three? I'm sorry, Madam Speaker or Madam Chair. What was number three?
Back to that question.
What's that?
It was unions. It was
unions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm all for unions within the private sector. If a company wants to, if a company and employees want to start a union, that's fine. If the federal government or any federal employee or any taxpayer-funded employee wants to form a union, absolutely not. 100% against it. If a company thinks that they can handle and maintain their business by allowing a union, and they're a private company working on their own profits, and they want to deal with a union, they're more than welcome to do so. I'm 100% opposed to it though in government employees. So yeah, but I also think that if a company decides to shut their doors because the union wants to try and break them, then people get what they deserve.
And with that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. So we now return to the negative. And for our next negative speaker, I am looking for Andy. Andy K. Andy, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, madam. This is not prepared. I just decided to talk about this, but I think one of the things that I think is that the reason that the proposition is incorrect is that since the time of Ronald Reagan, the Republicans have moved, have had policies based on trickle-down economics that have moved revenue from working people, from the middle class up to the wealthy. The discrepancy in wealth of the upper 1% is now so large that I don't know the exact statistics, but it's around where we were in the Gilded Age. And so the very idea that Republicans are for the working class seems ludicrous to me, completely ludicrous. Now, the reason it's working and that people think that it is good is because the Democrats have done a terrible job of messaging, and they haven't put things in the proper perspective. And Trump has tapped into a lot of what the people who are talking in the affirmative has said about talking down to them. They're angry, they feel put upon, they feel they've been abandoned by the Democrats. All of that stuff is completely valid. But the fear and the anger that Trump is tapping into is using them as puppets, because he now, and it's easy to see with Elon Musk and all of the other oligarchs that are going to be sitting with him in his inauguration, they are salivating at the prospect of Trump getting together with Putin and all of the other corrupt people who are gleefully siphoning money from their population. The Republicans over the years have made government a dirty word and blamed government for a lot of problems. And from Roosevelt, where he rescued the populace and rescued the working class and rescued people who were hurting, those policies are what Biden returned to. In the interim, between Reagan and Biden, we pretty much had trickle-down economics. And to the degree that the Democrats were complicit in that during those years, I'm not happy about that. But the strength that Trump projects and the anger that he taps into and the lies that he tells about what he's going to do for the working class are all work, and they worked in this election. But there is no way that trickle-down economics and the oligarchy is going to benefit anybody but Trump and that class of people. So that is why I say I'm against the idea, the very notion that Republicans are for the working class. Emotionally, feeling-wise, yes, but not economically.
Now, questions for our speaker. Let's go to John.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good enough. In the presentation, I was sorry for getting here late, but there is this notion that I hear from Democrats that still recognizes as the party of the benevolent master. It is very good, as you mentioned before, that the Democratic Party will rescue people from the Great Depression. If you join the Union, you will be protected. Although in Dick Durbin's first speech, he said that if somebody got...
Can we bring it to a question?
Okay. Is there the difference between the idea of having a benevolent government or freeing the middle class? There seems to be a great deal of contempt in the Democratic Party for what appears to be people that don't agree with them or don't come from their social economic background, particularly like the people that paid the $1.5 billion for the last presidential campaign in the last 15 weeks. Sorry, is that enough? I stop talking now?
Yeah. What does our speaker think about this?
I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about. To me, it sounds like anger at the idea of not being listened to, not being, being put down again. It seems like it's anger at being put down. I mean, if you want to talk about money that was raised, yes, lots of rich people gave money to Kamala Harris. The Democrats raised a lot of money, probably more than Trump. But when you look at the individual...
When the questioner, remember, address me.
I'm sorry. When the questioner... so that the money went to... let me back up, because the original question was benevolent overlord kind of thing. There was, people seem to be upset about the fact that government is trying to help them, and there seems to be at odds with freedom and essentially freedom to fail. And I just believe that the Republican ethos to me seems to be, I'm free, I'm going to get mine. It's a dog eat dog world. You're on your own. Leave me alone. Don't give me anything. I just want to be left alone to succeed or fail on my own. And the Democrats want to say, we're all in this together. Let's help people and do the greatest good for the greatest number. That's my sense of things and where I stand now. I'm happy to hear. I've heard a lot of opposing values, and I understand the anger of people who haven't gotten a college education and haven't been schooled in what the Democrats are about. They just seem weak and namby-pamby, whereas Trump seems strong.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. We're getting to some the core values, that sacred values of each side, and the anger. So that's what this conflict is about. So I'm now gonna go to another questioner. Let's start going back to people who've asked questions already. Charles, you've had your hand up a lot. Charles, do you have a question?
Yes,
Okay.
Madam Speaker, I'm trying to formulate the question. So I believe the speaker said something about the transition from trickle down to the present day and the reflection from the Gilded Age of the 1890s to what's happening today with the tech boom or whatever the heck is going on with these guys that are owning stuff. So the question is, how are people from the lower echelons of society who do not have resources in their bank accounts, how are they supposed to make ends meet on the Democratic platform?
Well, Madam Speaker, I would like to respond by saying that I don't understand the question as much as how are they supposed to respond to the Democratic platform? The Democratic platform is designed to help working people, is designed to spread wealth around, build it, as Biden said, from the bottom up and the middle out. It is not a philosophy of get as rich as you want and do what you want and try to be transactional and just get as much money as possible. Elon Musk being the richest person in the world, it's a question as to who is pulling whose strings. Is Trump pulling Musk's strings to get his inauguration paid for, or is Musk pulling Trump's strings to get regulation off of his back in Europe and so forth? So it's all happening at the upper echelons. It's all happening between, Trump is all transactional with the rich. He would like nothing more, in my estimation, than to, be the richest man in the world himself, or to have the power that Putin has. So to me, it's clear that the only party for working people, though they sure as hell can't message it properly, is the Democratic Party, because it's always been about a trend toward democratic socialism. The happiest people in the world are the highest taxed, according to the surveys that I've seen, because everything is provided for them. The government structures society. One speaker earlier said something about the bureaucratic nature of the healthcare system. Medicare is way, way more efficient than the jumble of competing insurance companies that are out there trying to, gouge you and not providing value.
Thank you. And we will go to one more question. I ask that we keep it brief. We are getting to the core, again, values. The chair will smile upon people who really want to make the case for these various value competitions. So for the last question for this speaker, let's go to Diana.
Hello. I'm not sure that I'm going to smile on either group. This is probably a question I'd have for both speakers. Why should we trust political parties to carry our fortunes? I'm more concerned about possibly working locally with local people to deal with local issues. I live in a city, but I've also lived in a rural county, and the problems are quite different. Urban labor is very different from rural labor, and California problems are very different from probably problems in Minnesota or West Virginia. So maybe we shouldn't put too much faith in political parties, period. And what kind of feeling do you have about that?
Does the speaker have about that?
Well,
Any
I
or all speakers, yes.
I think that's an excellent point. We have a very complicated local, regional, state, federal mix of government that all has to work together to provide value. All I'm saying is that if you want to get help and you want there to be a more even playing field and have fewer poor people and less people that have all of the money in fewer hands, then you want the Democrats, and that's going to be better for society as a whole, as opposed to the Republicans, where the only choice you have is to act the way that you did because the government isn't doing anything to help. So the citizens have to get together through charities. So, and charities and volunteerism, all of that stuff's wonderful. And that works on top of whatever the government can do for you. So I just feel government, the Democrats are the party of the working class and not the Republicans.
And with that, the speaker and the questioners are thanked. All right. We have moved through, we have had 3 on each side. We're now going to shorten the speeches so that we can get more of you who are on deck to be speaking. So for our next speech in the affirmative, we're going to give 3 minutes to Sulani. Sulani, please unmute.
All right. In today's resolution, sometimes it's not about the money. The culture war is real, and the Republicans are winning because they're listening. And I'm college educated with a professional degree, so are the majority of my farmer neighbors in my rural county. I live in the reddest county in Washington, voting 74% for the Trump Vance ticket. And in my world, it's not education that distinguishes Republican voters, but values. The traditional Republican Party values of family, private property, and valuing entrepreneurship resonate. Class, especially in the U.S., is not just about money or education, but about values. And the book Second Class was referenced by a previous speaker. One of its key points is how working class values have been ignored, if not actively disparaged, by the Democratic Party. Working class values include respect for hard work and advancement on merit, for strong families making decisions for their children's education and health care, policies cutting parents out of the loop when their children have questions about sexuality or have mental health issues have landed with a thud. So has the insistence that it's possible to change sex. And probably the most effective ad by the Trump campaign was, Kamala is for they, them, President Trump is for you. Remarks like we're all just deplorables clinging to our guns and Bibles still resonate negatively with the working class. Constantly hearing that all college-educated voters must be Democrats is just as insulting and prompted me to request the floor tonight. And to reiterate, sometimes it's not just about the money, it's about those deeply held values and beliefs that we carry with us every day.
Thank you to our speaker. And as we go into this next round of questions, I know I am very often mistaken for Nancy Pelosi, but I am not the speaker, I am the chair. So let's go for our first question to, is that Michelle? Michael? You want to unmute?
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's just working on it. I wonder if you could ask the speaker if it's possible for the Democratic Party to make a change so that they can appeal to the values that she spoke about so eloquently.
Lovely question for our speaker.
Of course, any organization can change. I have unfortunately not seen a whole lot of willingness to change because it would require backing up over so many things that that Democrats seem to have dug in on. And so while I hope that there's room for change, because I really believe that we need to have two functioning parties that have a breadth of participants who are willing to consider compromise as the reality of politics and to recognize that there may be some deep beliefs that we don't agree on and we'll have to figure out how we compromise. But right now, I'm not seeing any kind of compromise coming out of Democratic Party talking points, whereas the Republican Party is now experiencing the parliamentary style, building a coalition that does cross a lot of boundaries.
Thank you.
And for another question, let's go to Catherine.
Hello, Madam Chair. This is my first debate, so thank you everyone for this. I would like to ask the speaker if there's an example, this goes a little bit along with the previous question, if there's an example of a policy that Trump is proposing that could benefit the working class, where the speaker hopes that Democratic support or engagement with that proposal could help move it forward.
I have probably not spent as much time looking at what proposed policies are as some of you, because for one thing, until they're in office, they're all just talk. I am hoping that some of the economic policies, particularly efforts of the department, the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, will have an impact, because one of the key principles that I think all across the Republican coalition that resonates is government has grown too big and it's time for pruning. And any good gardener knows that you get better growth if you prune at the right time for the right amount and you get rid of the deadwood. And we are at a point where we need to do that. I am hoping that Democrats can use this as an opportunity to say, yeah, maybe that's not working. We shouldn't do it anymore.
For that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. So for our next speech in the negative, we have Jason Berkovich. Jason, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is also my first time participating, so I really appreciate being allowed to speak and just hearing the discourse so far. And when I was a child, I grew up often hearing actions speak louder than words. And while words clearly have an emotional impact, I think it can often be much more short term than an action. And what I see in terms of this resolution is essentially we have a party of words and we have a party of action. The Republican Party, to their credit, is great with words. I mean, they're led by a snake oil salesman. There are few things that are more insulting to members of the working class than being stiffed. And the leader of the Republican Party has been sued dozens and dozens and dozens of times for stiffing his own employees. That was unacceptable to the working class where I grew up. You had to pay them. You put in a hard day's work, you better get your paycheck. And the Republican is led by a guy that has repeatedly not paid people for putting in a hard day's work. Now, to their credit, the Republicans has been much better at empathizing. So they understand that people are struggling and they will actually talk about it. But what policies have they brought forward? While their Democratic Party talks about increasing taxes on the wealthy, such as Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, increasing taxes on the largest corporations that don't pay their fair share, and allowing workers to unionize so that they can have an equal voice to the corporations that largely control their day-to-day activities, the Republicans oppose all three of those. So while the words that the Republicans say sound good, it's the actions that the Democratic Party is actually trying to take that helps the working class. And that's the key here, is the Democrats are trying to pass policies, the Republicans are saying empty words.
Thank you to our speaker. And now for questions for this speaker. Let's go to the previous speaker, Sulani.
At the Braver Angels National Convention in Gettysburg, there was a reporter for the New York Times who was sent to New Jersey to interview some of those workers who were stiffed by Trump. And she said one of the things she missed was that they were all going to vote for Trump. And that should have been the story, but that story got killed by her editor. How would you explain the fact that those people who had gotten stiffed would still be enthusiastically voting for Trump?
So I really appreciate the question. And I think this goes to the heart of actions versus words, because to Trump's credit, what he says resonates with every one of those workers. And to Trump's credit, what he says has resonated with many workers. But ultimately, where has the benefit been? And if we look, particularly over the last 20 years, I'm talking 21st century, it's been disproportionate how income is divided under Democratic administrations versus how it's divided under Republican administrations. Under Republican administrations, including Trump's first term, with his tax cuts, almost all the benefits went to the wealthy. The corporations took their tax cuts and they did a bunch of stock buybacks. They didn't hire anybody or increase wages. So to Trump's credit, he said the words that those employees wanted to hear, but he didn't actually do anything to help them.
To get more speakers in, I am going to move us along. So with that, our speaker and questioners are thanked. We will now move to a speech in the affirmative. And for that, I'm looking for Chris Tripoli. Chris.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. I think this topic really took me back because the definition of class for me actually made me dig through my books that I kept from school, and I found a government book that that came from civics class my senior year in high school. Now, for some of you, you might remember when that was taught all of the time. But that was long ago. But I found that, and I found how class in a democracy had been defined. And it was defined really by work. It was defined by wage, which equaled what we called then social status. It had nothing to do with education, which is in recent times seemed to have been the discussion. Working class means you're working with your hands, and that's because you didn't go to college. Everyone needs to go to college. And if you have a good college degree, you're probably not working class. I've never agreed with that. And we didn't used to teach that. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that if you are in a working class, that means you are somehow a subclass. Working class is found everywhere in agriculture and construction, manufacturing, retail, transportation, administration, teachers, healthcare, nursing. These are people that by their social status, they are working to pay bills to get by. I think the best attraction for working class to any political party, and that's the reason why I believe the Republican Party is doing such a better job of it. The best attraction to attract and improve working class people is opportunity. Opportunity means more opportunity given for them to work or create or progress, and that means less restriction, less regulation. We've seen that when we've seen the growth of small business. We've seen that with people who maybe don't have a four-year college degree, but they've worked their way from working class now into a higher class because they've developed entrepreneurism, they've got small businesses, working from home. These are opportunities that I've seen, and we can have more of these opportunities if we have more encouragement and less restriction. Change is definitely the price of progress. So we have to have some change. When we change, that means things are different and some jobs are lost. It has to be. Should we have not changed banking when somebody invented the ATM machine, 40 years ago? But that did cost tellers jobs. So things do change, but progress is part of that change. And I just think that the Republican Party right now, maybe it hasn't always been, but the Republican Party right now does represent progress, change that helps create opportunity. That's what attracts the working class. That's what the Democrats haven't seen. They've been demonstrating, and it wasn't with poor messaging. It was with poor actions. It was with things like everyone needs to go to college. We should obviously tax more people to get more money so we can send people to college. And then if they go to college, they shouldn't have to pay for it because we'll pay for it for them. Those were the things that I think were wrong messaging, and it was because they had wrong actions. And that maybe helped the Republicans become a little bit more connected with the working class.
Thank you to our speaker. And for our question, let's go to Ernest.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, I can't quote numbers for you, but I know that the Biden administration, more small businesses were started because of his policies in the last 4 years. And I just would like the previous speaker to comment on that.
I don't think, Madam Chair, I think the question is a good one, but I don't think the result is because of the administration. I think it was in spite of. I think we've had an increase that started years earlier than the Biden administration. It's as technologically advanced as we get, as small businesses were increasing during Trump's term. Actually, before Trump's term, we had small businesses building. So I think what we saw was a continuation of small business growth and entrepreneurism. And that was even with the poor administrative assistance that Biden was doing.
I'll take one more question. Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you hearing me? I'm on my phone, pardon me. So first of all, I wanted to say that I appreciated the speaker's legacy definition of class. I also took civics class all those years ago. And I think what I heard is that the definition is really around people that have more modest incomes and maybe are even small business owners and that type of thing, which I would agree with. And so with that, I guess my question, Madam Chair, to the speaker is, how do working class people that have more modest incomes, that are maybe more involved with smaller businesses, how do they identify with someone like the Republican leader, Donald Trump, who has been really more pro-corporations, and his own behavior has been more focused really on profits versus people? And he comes from a more privileged class. So I would just have a curiosity about how the speaker believes that people of working class and how he defined them would identify with someone like the Republican leader, Donald Trump.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I think that's an excellent question. I think part of my answer might surprise you because I'm a successful small business person, have been all my life. I don't identify with Donald Trump. I haven't liked Donald Trump. When I owned my very first business in the 80s, I was excited about this brashy guy in New York, and he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. I bought that book. I bought his second book. As a young man in the 80s owning a small business, I thought I was going to learn something from him. For those of you who maybe did buy the book, you probably have the same opinion I do. There was nothing to learn in those books. I think he comes across in his writing, as he does most of the time, as it's all about me. I'm great, you're not, so shut up and follow me. There wasn't anything really to learn. But I think what you agree with isn't so much, and what you follow and what you bond with isn't so much the person, but the policies and the result of policies. So the person to me is a turnoff. I'm disappointed in the person. I wish the person could be different, but wishing doesn't make it so. So every time he grabs the microphone, my toenails start to curl too. However, the proof is in the policies, and the policies seem to be more for the larger working people, the small business person, the opportunities to get ahead. And so I see that coming from labor, commerce. I see more small federal government and more state support. And those are the kinds of things that say, I like and I can identify with. And maybe there's many others that see it that way too.
Thank you so much to our speaker and our questioners. All right, let's see. We are now moving to a speech in the negative, and I have Atul on deck. Atul, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And in my mind, I think neither party is good for working class, and they never will. And also my mind is that economy is never, ever driven by who is in the power and what policies they do. Economics are driven by their own cycle and their own weight and how enterprising the population is. I am not going to defend Democrat in any way, and I'm not a Democrat. But the question here is about Republican Party. First, we have to clarify that Trump is not a Republican. In true Republican, if you see from Nixon, I would not go before that because I don't have that much information before that. But Republican from Nixon to Reagan to Bush were different. They were for smaller government and trickle-down economy and deregulation. The deregulation has definitely, whenever a lot of hope they have given to the working class or the people who are not in power, that regulation is killing them. But regulation is only for the corporations or big business. I don't think that a lot of regulation impacts like person like me. But the fundamental of this is that, okay, cutting regulation is going to help grow economy because it's trickled down. I have not seen any policies from last 30, 40 years which actually protect interest of workers, removing unions, not raising the minimum wage, not providing health care. The biggest thing which a lot of people say that it should be proof in the pudding is that many states for like decades and decades are ruled by Republican governors or party, in fact, 2/3 majority, and they are the poorest. As compared to California or New York or Massachusetts. So saying that Republican Party is working class is saying that, oh, this party which has ruled Louisiana for, I don't know, forever, Louisiana ranking and the index of their prosperity is very, very poor. I know it's like only 3 minutes, so I will not go much, but that's how I see that Republican Party is not done anything as a party, not Trump. Trump is a different breed, and we can talk about that separately, but Republican Party as a party is never for the working class. Thank you.
Thank you to our speaker. And we now will go to Stephen. Stephen, for a question.
I'm Steve. I'm a new kid on the block. This is my first Braver Angel activity.
Welcome.
I'm a liberal. And I must say, a particular individual just waved her hands at me from Washington State. And my conservative friend who has invited me to Braver Angels here in Massachusetts wants me to become part of the leadership team here in Massachusetts. This is the first thing I've done. But that individual from Washington State, I identified talking to my friend, and he said, oh, she's cool. We're going to want to work with her. I already know her. But the point I want to make, which is not a question, it's we have to figure out how to work together, not just understand our differences. My most conservative friend had a serious case of cancer last year.
I am looking for a question for the speaker right now.
I know, but here's my question. How do we get to working together in this context? This friend of mine that was doing the cancer battle, what we have in common is a cancer battle. And it made us bridge so many things just getting together to focus on healthcare, separate from this big debate. How do we bring ourselves together?
The speaker may handle that however he likes.
Madam Chair, join Bravest Angels.
Sure.
That is definitely a good step. And I again, as Bravest Angel says that, and that's why I joined a couple of months back, was that we are not that different. Our healthcare needs and our needs for our school and educations are same. What we want as a normal 99.99% people is make sure that we earn enough to feed our family, get some vacation, kids are going to school. If they want to go to college, they are able to afford the college and get job. What else we want? And so everyone does not matter Republican and Democrat. Don't go on the what they say. I always suggest that look at the candidate. The party system is definitely the problem. We should get rid of this two-party system because that is the biggest problem which divides us more than unites us.
All right, and I want to get 2 more speeches in, so we are going to go to our final speaker in the affirmative for the night will be Amy Teutenberg. Amy, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I come from a family of union workers, loyal Democrats for generations, but the Democrat Party ceased to be for the working class when Bill Clinton allowed China to enter the World Trade Organization, forcing American union workers to compete with sweatshops, forced labor, and child labor in China, calling this the fancy word economic cooperation or global cooperation. And also then bringing in illegal immigrants as workers and making excuses and claiming that they care about those immigrants. So anyone that has a problem with this is a racist. And that is the reason that Hillary Clinton lost the election, because she wanted to further expand this to the East Asian Pacific Partnership, not because people are sexist. It was Donald Trump that came to my city where I grew up with my uncles, showing me all the rotting factories where thousands of people used to work. Donald Trump came there, and he's the only one that has ever said anything about it and enforced tariffs or did anything to stop all of these products from coming here. Now, I know it's not the perfect solution, but we thought that this was inevitable. Obama did nothing, Bush did nothing. And so I guess, and every time I've tried to talk about this, I've been interviewed multiple times. Everything is cut out, and the only thing that the news media seems interested is why, as a woman, would I vote for Trump based on his comments on the Howard Stern show. And so the Democrat Party, you cannot be for unions and workers. If Kamala Harris said that the tariffs are would cause cost to ride for consumers, so then are you for workers or are you not for workers? Are you for racial justice or not? Because that doesn't really help Chinese workers. And I think just the other thing culturally, I think even my own experience in Braver Angels is people that work in academia or have some high position in society that do not see people that have regular jobs as equal or capable of making decisions about what is best for them and their own lives. And so, no, people decided, the campaign that was run by Turning Point that I was a part of versus the Democrat Party brought in a bunch of celebrities. People went door to door and talked to their neighbors. This was a very grassroots thing. And I've had a bunch of people that believe that regular people are not equal to them, did not bother to talk to them, did not think their opinions mattered, or that they were capable of making decisions and their decisions must be made out of racism and sexism, and still failing to really take seriously this issue of how many jobs have been
30
lost.
seconds, Amy.
Yes, that is my what I have to say.
Thank you. The co-chair from Milwaukee is thanked. One question. Let's go to Clyde.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. So I empathize with a lot of what you're saying right now about
What
the Democratic
saying.
Party. Hmm?
What
Oh, I'm sorry. So the speaker
yes,
is saying.
Thank you.
And about not being listened to and not having your needs heard or an attempt to meet your needs being met. And I'm wondering what you think the role of capitalism is in all of this and the way capitalism is structured and the fact that our wealth gap has continually widened since the 80s and is higher now than it's ever been. And what you spoke about NAFTA and that kind of thing, and I understand the effects of that. But what do you think about capitalism, and
what does
might
the
there be?
speaker think?
Yeah, what might there be a better way to organize this?
What does the speaker think about capitalism?
So I believe in capitalism with regulations to ensure human rights and workers' rights. And Donald Trump is not a libertarian or the Ayn Rand or even what a neoliberal, what the Clintons and the Bushes would and the Romneys would be doing. So I think that we need to protect our industries from people that are don't follow laws about human rights or workers' rights, selling their products here to compete. I think it's okay to compete with other countries that follow those basic things, and then people that are hiring people illegally. So when you're doing something unethically, there just does need to be laws and regulations about that. But I'm all for free markets as long as we ensure those rights and ethics are being done while we're doing business.
With that, our speaker and questioners are thanked. And we now move to our final speech of the night in the negative. I am looking for Paul.
I'm here.
3 minutes. The floor.
Okay. I'm going to bring up a subject that hasn't been discussed at all in this whole last campaign, probably hasn't been discussed for 10 or 20 years. But I think it's definitely is or should be a working class issue. First of all, my definition is that the differences between the working class and the ownership class is, whether you have to work for a living or if you can live on your investments. And, all of us have a little bit. We've got some put away for retirement and stuff like that. But most of us still have to go to work every day if we want to eat. Now, there have been times when the money that you earn these two ways have been taxed the same, and there have been times when it's been different. I'm not quite sure what it was like back before the 1980s, but part of Ronald Reagan's tax reform in the 80s was to equalize the tax rates for both kinds of income. You didn't distinguish between those. In other words, if you worked to make your money, you were taxed at the same rate as if you benefited from, an investment that you didn't have to do any work for. George Bush the first, in his first campaign, immediately started campaigning to change that and have a special capital gains rate. He didn't succeed, but Clinton actually signed it in, although he was kind of coerced into doing it because there was something he wanted to get passed and the Republicans wouldn't let it through Congress. So since then, we've had a special rate for capital gains. And then Bush 2 actually increased it to dividends also. And this just strikes me as being fundamentally unfair, even though I benefited from it. I bought some $1,000 worth of Apple stock 25 years ago, and that thing has grown so much that every time I'm a little short on cash, I can cash in a little and it just keeps growing and still ends up being like $50,000. And I just sold $13,000 of it last month, and I'm not even going to have to pay any taxes at all on it. And that, I just don't think that that's fair. And I think really this should be a working class issue, because working class people are the ones who are carrying the weight of running the country. And I'd be curious about how people from different points of view feel about this, if they've thought about it.
Thank you to our speaker, and we will go to Charles for our final question of the night.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you would.
If the speaker would.
Yes, Madam Chair. I don't like calling people chairs, but Madam Table. Can we table this question? No, I'm just kidding. Let me see here.
Or the
What
speaker.
was I gonna ask? I already forgot. You have to ask a question now.
All right, let's go to John for the last question of the night.
Me, okay. Thank you very much. But in your talking about capital gains, I'm curious as how you avoided any capital gains tax on that.
Speaker, address
This, ask the speaker how he managed to avoid capital gains, and if he thinks perhaps that if the rich is paying such a large portion of the government, that maybe it is not them that are being burdened so much by the tax, but the speaker, that we need to find a way of making sure that we're getting our money's worth from the government.
There you go.
Final question.
What you were saying, Paul.
Okay, well, certainly we should all be in agreement that we want to get our money's worth from the government, and that we want to operate efficiently. But that's a separate issue, so put that aside. Now, you're wondering, how do I end up paying no tax on that? Well, because they cut the rates down to half the rates, but if your overall income is low enough, it ends up coming down to zero for that portion of your income. I didn't write the law. Yes, I'm going to take advantage of it, but it's, no matter how the government's run, no matter, how efficient it is, it should also be fair in terms of how people are contributing into that.
Capital gain.
All right, and thank you to our speaker and our questioners. All of our speakers and questioners for the night. Jazz hands. I now, seeing the lateness of the hour, I hereby, I'm looking for an appropriate motion to adjourn.